As the world struggles to recover from the pandemic and the global supply chain crisis, a new conflict quietly ignites not with weapons, but through tariffs, politics, and control over critical trade routes. The Panama Canal, a modern marvel and a lifeline for global shipping, has become the centerpiece in a tense geopolitical chess match between the United States and China. Drought, Trump's aggressive tariffs, and a shifting balance of power are forcing the world to hold its breath. What is truly happening behind the gates of one of the most vital waterways on Earth?
Okay, let's dive in. The Panama Canal, it's way more than just this amazing waterway, right? This incredible piece of engineering.
Absolutely. It's basically a lifeline for global trade, a critical artery, really.
But right now, it seems like it's facing, well, a double whammy maybe, a couple of big challenges hitting at once.
That's what our sources are pointing to, yeah. You've got, on one hand, these, extreme weather issues, drought, El Nino. It's causing real water level problems, a crisis, actually.
Okay, the weather crisis,
Right.
And the other factor.
And then, bam, you have the impact of the U.S.-China trade war. Specifically, these pretty hefty tariffs that have been put in place.
Right, and for you listening, this isn't just some faraway issue. I mean, the canal is so central to global supply chain.
Exactly. When things slow down there, it ripples out.
Big time. It could affect, the products you buy, maybe even prices. We're talking huge numbers here, like 40% of all U.S. container traffic.
About $270 billion worth of goods going through annually. It's massive.
So that's our mission for this deep dive then, to sort of unpack these challenges.
Yeah, understand what's driving them, what the knock-on effects could be, and pull out the key insights from our source material for you.
Okay, let's start with the weather piece. The source mentions the canal's been battling this for a few years now. Extreme conditions.
It has, yeah. It's presented as this kind of ongoing underlying issue, the water levels.
So a pre-existing condition almost.
You could say that. And while our main source pivots pretty quickly to the trade war stuff, you have to remember this environmental pressure. It makes the whole system inherently more fragile.
Okay, so that baseline vulnerability makes it maybe more susceptible to these economic shocks like the trade war.
Exactly. It sets the stage, as you said.
All right, let's dig into that trade war angle then. President Trump's tariffs on Chinese goods.
Yeah.
145% tariff is, well, that's not small.
No, it's definitely significant. And the timing is interesting, too. The impact started hitting goods arriving at U.S. ports around, late May?
Right, because of the shipping time from Asia, 4 to 6 weeks typically.
Precisely. And what's really striking is how quickly the shipping patterns reacted.
The source calls it a massive pause on U.S. imports from China. That sounds pretty dramatic. What does that actually look like?
Well, we've got some data here from Project 44. They track supply chains. They reported a huge jump, like 300% in blank sailings.
Blank sailing, so canceled trips.
Yeah, canceled freight vessel voyages from China to the U.S. specifically. And that's just since the tariff announcement back on April 2nd.
Wow. 3 times the usual cancellations. That's a strong signal of a slowdown.
It really is. Fewer ships are making the journey.
So where does that hit first? Which ports feel it immediately?
Initially, it's the West Coast ports in the U.S. feeling it the most. But the expectation is that the East Coast ports will see an increasing impact too.
Okay. And this isn't just ships deciding not to sail in isolation, right?
No.
It connects back.
Absolutely. It's directly linked to fewer manufacturing orders coming out of China. If companies aren't ordering goods,
Then there's less stuff to put in containers. And fewer containers mean fewer ships are needed.
got it. It's the chain reaction. Less demand, less production, fewer containers, fewer ships.
And we have some specific numbers for the East Coast route from Sea Intelligence, I believe.
We do. They tracked a cumulative blank capacity, so canceled space of 261,822 TEUs.
TEUs. Those are the standard 20-foot containers.
That's the one. And that's just over the last 6 weeks on that Asia to North America East Coast route. That is a lot of shipping capacity just gone, taken offline.
Okay, so fewer ships, fewer containers crossing the ocean. How does that translate directly into problems for the Panama Canal itself, its business?
Well, the Panama Canal Authority, their whole revenue stream is basically tied to two things. The number of ships passing through and the amount of cargo, the container volume they're carrying.
Simple enough. Tolls per ship, fees per container.
Pretty much. So if you have a big drop in ships coming from Asia to the U.S. East Coast, ships that would normally use the canal, maybe the ones that do come are carrying less.
Then the canal's earnings take a direct hit.
Logically, yes.
Yeah.
It's a negative impact.
And there's a quote in the source from Boris Moreno, VP of Operations at the Canal Authority.
Yes, and he puts it very plainly. He says, essentially, since almost 75% of their cargo is linked to the U.S., any recession, whether worldwide or just in the U.S., is going to impact the canal. He says, that's for sure.
That really highlights their dependence on U.S. trade, doesn't it? A key vulnerability.
It absolutely does.
Okay, so we have this fragile system due to weather, and now a major trade disruption cutting traffic and potentially revenue. But there's another layer here, too, the geopolitics. The canal's always been strategic.
Always. I mean, the source calls it one of the 7 wonders of the modern world, which speaks volumes. And yeah, it's right in the middle of this broader U.S.-China competition for global influence.
And President Trump has been pretty vocal about China's role there, hasn't he? Claims about them controlling ports.
He has, yeah. Allegations about China having significant influence over key ports near the canal, even mentioning excessive rates charged by Panama.
And threatening to reassert U.S. control.
That was mentioned too. But it's crucial to add, our source notes both China and Panama have flatly denied those claims.
Okay. The source also mentions recent visits by top U.S. officials. Secretary of State Rubio, Secretary of Defense Hegseth.
That's right. Both have met with Panamanian officials in recent months. It certainly signals, a high level of U.S. attention, maybe concern about Panama's strategic position.
And there's a quote from a U.S. official, a federal maritime commissioner, Luis Sola. What was his take?
Well, he's quoted suggesting Panama has been inching closer and closer to China over the last 5 years and away from the U.S. He even mentions reports about Panama losing contracts to Chinese and Brazilian firms.
So, painting a picture of shifting alliances, perhaps.
That seems to be the implication, yes. Hints of a changing economic landscape there.
But the head of the Panama Canal Authority, Ricord Vasquez, he pushes back on that narrative.
He does. He emphasizes that they are listening to U.S. concerns, they're under review, but he also directly refutes several points, the idea of Chinese control, any differentiated pricing, even historical inaccuracies about the construction deaths.
So what's his core message then?
Neutrality, basically. He stresses the canal's neutrality treaty, saying it's open to everyone, serving global trade. That seemed to be his main point, open access for all.
Interesting. And just briefly, the source touches on a potential deal involving port ownership at the ends of the canal.
Yeah, it mentions a possible acquisition attempt. A U.S.-led group, BlackRock, apparently looking to buy some ports, including those key ones at the Atlantic and Pacific entrances from C.K. Hutchison, which is Hong Kong-based.
But the outcome isn't clear yet.
No, the source says it's uncertain. Something to keep an eye on, definitely.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive, it really feels like the Panama Canal, this absolutely pivotal point in global trade, is caught in a serious squeeze.
Yeah, it's not just one thing. You've got the ongoing environmental strain, the water level issues.
Right, that underlying fragility.
And then layered on top, this significant disruption from the U.S.-China trade tensions, which seems to be directly reducing traffic.
And potentially hitting their revenue hard. It really drives home how interconnected everything is, doesn't it? How a trade dispute can physically impact major infrastructure like this.
Absolutely. These aren't abstract economic forces. They have tangible consequences on the ground, or in this case, on the water.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. Given how incredibly strategic the canal is, and with these environmental and trade pressures converging, how might this reshape global trade routes in the long run? Could it shift the balance of economic power?
That's a big question. And it makes you wonder what other critical choke points around the world might be just as vulnerable to this kind of perfect storm of pressures. Something to think about.